Callie, thank you so much for taking time to hang with us today. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you, David. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I want to open up with a light question for you. It's very light. You are both an intuitive and a historian. And so I want to know, how do you think people 100 years from now will look back on the time that we're living in right now? How do you think that those people 100 years from now will think about the time that we're living in? How will they talk about it? Give me your perspective on that.
I think that they're going to look back and think that we're pretty confused. I don't really feel like we're living in a super highlighted time. I feel like people are struggling with connection, and I feel that people are struggling with doing like honoring their own morals and values, and just whatever their. You know how Higgy is so big right now? Like just I would like to be in my cozy socks with my cocoa. I think people are struggling to just say that's okay. And then there's so much anger. Being an historian means that I can look back and see other times in history where people were so super angry. Mm-hmm. But they dealt with it differently. They used to call Franklin Delano Roosevelt the Sphinx. And what was interesting about him is that when he won his fourth term, the gentleman that he lost to, and of course his name just escaped me, but is a funny name. He's sent to England during the Blitz, and he was his man of the people. So he was able to make friends with everybody. And even if they were somebody that he had defeated, he was still there to sort of help them along. Mm-hmm. It was a different kind of camaraderie, I think, that was more about healing the country and doing things as a whole versus, today where everything is so this way or that way. Mm-hmm. And of course, being in Washington, D.C. all these years, for 30 years means that I have all of these Fortune 500 and Fortune 5000 clients because I've done the high-end residential design. And of course, many of those clients have been healing clients and working with psychiatrists and psychologists and OBGYNs, and had my referral system through the professionals, right? But basically, I never sat anybody down and said, hey, what's your political affiliation and how do you vote? And no, I'm a people person. I'm about compassion and empathy. I love people. And so I've always felt a really strong duty. And so I think that's something that people are struggling with is, I think celebrity culture has poisoned our minds to an extent. And it's time to go back to, I think, the critical thinking and considering who is this person that I'm hiring as a coach, as a consultant, as a construction person on my house, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And can I shake their hands and, like mano a mano? And I'll finish with that with just like a quick story, David. And that was that years ago, there was a gentleman who was sort of like trying to mentor me. And I said, I think I should become an attorney. And he said, no, Callie, you're never going to need to be an attorney because even if you had the skill set, he said, because you should always just be able to talk things out. And so I did that. And I worked for the biggest names in the world and never got sued. Like, knock on wood, that's my claim to fame. I was always able to talk it out. So I do feel like there is a lot to be said for kind of like bringing it all down a little bit, calming down, and just getting to what it is that is really, I guess the word of the decade is triggering people, and doing the healing work that we all need to do as individuals to be accountable and responsible to our own pain and our own path forward. Mm. Yeah. So that I think I'm hoping that that's what the historians of 100 years hence will see.
Yeah. Tell us about your own history, your own journey of awakening to consciousness, mindfulness, spirituality. Did you grow up in a home that had faith or spirituality a part of your upbringing, or was that something that kind of unfolded for you over the course of a life?
Well, I know your background. And so that resonates with me. I'm going to be, I'll bear my soul here. So I was fascinated by church, which was sort of the Quaker church, the Friends, right?
Mhm.
It was about friendship. And so because I was with my grandparents, who I absolutely adored, and my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He had joined when he was just like 15 or 16 years old. And they were a really funny, romantic, happy couple. And that was really until I was 10. And when I was 10, a lot of things happened. My father was a government official, and gunmen came to the house after apparently trying to assassinate him and not being able to kill him. And so then they held us hostage all night long. And as the oldest of the kids, that's something that you can't really explain to people how that was, because the shower had broken that night. And so my mother wasn't where she was supposed to be. And anyway, so it's traumatizing. And so what they both said to me, my parents said to me that week, which is also the week that my grandfather was crushed on a job site. He was an electrician. So within like 3 or 4 days, it all happened. And and so his life was ruined. He did live another 25 years, but it was really just a life of medical appointments. And, it was not what they thought that their retirement was going to be. But anyway, so my mother said to me, and she was tough, David. She had 3 brothers, no sisters. But she said, Callie, you're going to get up and go to school, and you're just going to do your thing and stay with the structure of your life. And she said, because if you don't, then these bad guys win. They win. And so she's like, you could get hit by a Mack truck tomorrow or a drunk driver. So she said, there's no guarantees for how long your life will be. And I think because I was so blessed that I had my grandparents till I was 35. And then my great grandmother, who was a midwife, she was there until I was like 7 or 8. So like, it was like a big deal. Like I knew these people. And I loved mystery stories and had read all of Sherlock Holmes and, Agatha Christie, like when I was like 9 and 10, The Hound of the Baskervilles. So ghost stories and things like that were really attractive to me. But they also scared the bejesus out of me. And I remember all of these like animals, stuffed animals in my room that I had to have them take out because they were staring at me.
Mm.
Um, but it wasn't long after that some really spooky stuff started to happen. And I will say that because my parents were scientists and my mother worked in a hospital, the topic of death was always there, the reality of death. And my mother also, to this day, is like a 50-year veteran for the archaeology. So she's Society of American Archaeology, Pennsylvania Archaeology, and she wrote the newsletters. And so different things happened that I think got you in tune to the other. While I was very academically minded, I was winning awards for my artistry, my painting, and, I'm a top graduate at SCAD. And if anybody's ever been to the Savannah Theater, the SCAD Theater, I designed that and the console. So the visual ability, translating that clairvoyant, clear seeing had always been there in my artwork. And then that translated to interior design. And if you think that your hairdresser knows a lot about you, you should talk to your interior designer. Okay. Because you're with these people through thick and thin. In fact, this morning, Rupa, one of my best friends and clients, she's at the funeral for her mother. And so my relationship with the clients is like a friendship. But what I was going to say is when I was in high school, we were coming up to a stop sign, and it was dark, and it was kind of like built into the road, and there was a stop sign. And I can't remember how many were with us. I know 5 or 6. And one of those friends and I stayed close for till now. And so what happened was I saw a figure, and he was sort of like it was dark, sort of like a hobo. And he had the stick over his shoulder with like the red bandana bag.
Mhm.
And he was in like his overalls. But it was pitch black. And I saw him this way and then going up the hillside. And the car just stopped at the stop sign. And, you're with like a bunch of like teenagers, like 17-year-olds. And there's total silence in the car. And I don't know if it was me or somebody else that said, did anybody else just see what just happened? And like half the car said yes, and half the car said no. And when my buddy came, I won't say his name, but when my buddy came, let's just say though that he's a pilot, so like a very factual type person. And we talked about this years later. It brought tears to his eyes because he's like, Callie, that was, I saw that. And I said, well, hello. And really what had happened was that figure had to like move through the car to get to the other side. So it was really crazy. And then maybe like 2 or 3 years later, my mother, there had been a big factory built near where we lived, a gigantic international factory. And when they were excavating, they found that there was a whole Native American dig. And so all of these friends of hers from around the country and people that had been receiving the newsletter, because she was a trustee on the Native American Indian Museum and the Smithsonian. So lots of people had come. And so she said one day she was like zipping out of the house in her little 6 shift. And she's like, do you want to come with me? And I'm like, okay, sure. And you have to jump in. And she's racing down the road. And she said, they're closing up a secret dig. And I said, okay. And I said, I got there. And what had happened was maybe like 10 miles, maybe from this big dig, a homeowner had discovered right in their front yard in a cul-de-sac, a Native American dig. And they had these big flagstones. And then there was like a mother and 2 children that she was cradling. And so what they were doing is trying to excavate it very quickly, photograph it, and then put it all back together again so that no one would know it was there and that nothing would be disturbed. And so it was like 5 o'clock on a sunny summer day, and they had been at it like for 12 or 15 hours. And so when I got there, and of course I had been on other digs and things like that. And I said, do you need help? Because they looked exhausted. They were squatting, and they said, oh, Callie, sure. And I said, do you want me to finish? And of course, here I am, like I'd gone to Carnegie Mellon, and then I was at SCAD and graduating at the top of my class and, a lot of honors and awards with that. And so I said, of course, I knew just how to be delicate. And so I did all of the eye sockets and the tinkling of the earrings and the jewelry and the babies and the clothing. And it was so moving and powerful and has always stayed with me. And so to hearken back to that question about religion, the Bible was always confusing to me. I was like, what the heck? Like salt and, I couldn't get my head around the imagery, which is kind of strange actually. But for the Native American ways, I was much more in tune because I felt that they were a little bit like the Buddhists. They were thinking about how to be in tune with the earth, in tune with the seasons of life, and honoring and understanding death. So I think that's like, I loved church because of community, and I loved church being with my grandparents. And of course, my grandmother was my teacher, and there was and she had her own ways, David. She'd lay out the paper towels and give you the soda, and everybody had their own snack so that they could be entertained. And you would read the comic book, version of whatever you were studying that week. So it had its own delightful charm about it, but it wasn't it wasn't speaking to me. It wasn't like gripping me.
The richness that you sensed. Right.
Yeah.
And so at what point did you personally begin to recognize that you had some psychic abilities, and how did that begin to unfold for you?
Yeah. I had them all of my life. I had strange things happen. And I still do. I was going to pull this out for you earlier, David, and I forgot, but here, I'm going to pull something out for you. So I'm blessed because I was really raised well. I was really raised well. And so I have a loving family. And even though we had tragedies and things that happened to us, and by the way, after the whole hostage thing, then it happened again 4 years later because, but anyways, they're such good people. They're such amazing people. And, we're here and we survived and we're duty driven. And, here I am, like, once I had my kids, I'm volunteering all the time. And, I'm like a 1,500 hour a year volunteer. And so what happened was, I've always, after I was on television, okay, you're right. Let me back up. So I had this delightful client, interior design client, and I had gone home to my own house, which was like 180 years old. And it had a word that I can't even say. I don't want to say it, but it was the P word. You remember the famous movie from the 80s? Okay. Like the P word, the Steven Spielberg movie.
Okay.
And so that was my house.
Hmm.
The chairs were rocking, the doors were closing and opening, the
Hmm.
water was running. It was terrifying.
Hmm.
And so that was, I had like sort of like had a serendipitous path of taking a course on opening your intuition, which at that point, 20 years ago, no one was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now eventually I went on and I studied with James Van Praagh, who pulled me out of the crowd and said, "Oh my goodness, I've never seen, somebody's touching my hair right now. I've never seen anyone have so many angels and loved ones around them. Like, you're just so protected, Callie, and you've got so," and I said, "I believe it. Oh my gosh, do I
Hmm.
believe it? Like that, yes." And so I think it was a confluence of events. And because of my artistic ability and because of my academic standing and because of the caliber of work that I had done for years and years and years, winning big projects and major show houses and doing the artistic renderings and having them then come to fruition. Um, I had a peculiar talent, and really I quantify that today as something called transactive memory. And if anybody enjoys Malcolm Gladwell, what he calls transactive memory, it's in his book, The Bomber Mafia. But what it's talking about is that, for instance, he talks about how Helen Keller, had these comforting words for everyone when the Nazis were burning books, because she said, "Listen, don't even worry about it. We have read these books. We have absorbed that knowledge. It's part of who we are." And I think that I do sort of have an encyclopedia of the thousands of books that I've read and conversations I've had and friendships that I've had. And I think that when you have this background of being held hostage and protecting your siblings and um, what is virtually a near-death experience, it does open you up to a greater way of seeing the world.
Hmm.
And that is just a fact. And I have friends that have survived 9/11. I have friends that have survived their own version. And I think sometimes it can play both small and big. And what I was going to show you here is something kind of funny. So I was on television for many, many years, and those clients still, they still talk to me. They still are a part of my life. And so what happened was I never advertised. I was on TV. I had like 3 or 4 years, and so I met everybody, and I loved them, and they loved me for the most part. So Bill Phillips called me when I was on television, and he was starting out as a medium, and we would exchange readings. And I love Bill. I think he's wonderful. And I met Joseph Labruto, and he said, "Callie, take over my radio show for an episode or two because I've got something else to do." And John Holland and Lisa Williams. And so those people were really, so I felt like they just sort of had my back. Like, everybody reached out and friended you. And maybe you had like a few conversations, Caroline Miss, I think. And I can't even remember, like maybe Sonia Chukit, I don't remember, but like, people that were your friends, to let them know that they were backing you up. And then there were other people that I went to some Hay House events, and I really felt like their behavior was abhorrent, like really just not what the work was supposed to be about, because I'm just so duty driven. And most of these people are so duty driven. They just want to heal people and they want to be helpful. So I don't really think it's supposed to be about fame. I'm, in fact, incredibly uncomfortable with fame and social media. But what happened was, so then I just sort of built up my clientele, and it was entirely through word of mouth, and then being on the television and as an evidential psychic medium. And of course, they were testing me through that. So that's how it got started for me. And then really for 15 years, I went out and gathered a lot of other expertise. So my healing work involves past life regression hypnosis and future life progression hypnosis. I created brain entrainment albums. Those are all available under the Callie Claire. And I was using my singing, I was in chorus and played the violin. And so I really believed that that can really calm you when you are in a complete panic state. And so then I was like just back to back booked for years, like probably 10 or 15 years. And then I had my kids really late in life. So I had my kids at 41 and 45. And then that changed things. But what I was going to tell you was like a spooky thing. So I'm going to cover the name on this. So what happened was I got married. I had my children. And then right during COVID, my mother-in-law had stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And she had one of those radical surgeries where they take like 5 or 6 organs. And so right before she went into hospice, we took her to the beach, and my husband owned a store. And so he took a week off work and we went to this really beautiful beach called Oak Island in North Carolina. We'd never been there before, rented a house on the beach. It was so peaceful and lovely, David. It was so nice. Well, anyways, there's thousands of people, right, that you're crossing paths with on the beach. But leave it to Callie to find somebody. So I'm just going to cover the name on this. But anyways, so I talked to this lady. She had young kids, smaller than mine. And I said, talked to her all about Girl Scouts because I was a founding leader and I had started one of the biggest troops in the country. And I just said, you've got to do this for your kids. When you're the leader, you get to say how you want things to be. And I talked to her husband, who was so lovely. I'm going to just cover her name. Okay. Well, anyway, so she's saying, is this your mother? That's what the picture is. A
Huh.
picture of my mother and her parents at a high school reunion.
No
And
way.
literally thousands of people walking by on the beach, but I pick out somebody that
There's a connection, a deep connection. My
yeah,
goodness. Wow. Wow.
grew
Wow.
up,
Wow.
and that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
So to me, and what I wrote the book on, is really about practical magic. It's like, I don't want anyone ever to, first off, a reading with me is so healing because I give the names and the dates and the places, and we're picking up on all the information. So that's so lovely. But I think what's really special is that we do the healing work, and then I sort of am like birthing the baby, pushing them out the door, because I don't want anybody to ever feel that beholden to someone. Really the healing work, it's like you're supposed to matriculate on. So I might hear from my clients once a year, once every couple of years. But it ends up that they'll be friends. And then I'm the person going to baby showers and maybe funerals and farewells. And so it's sort of beautiful. And I guess I could say that I designed it to kind of work with my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this new book that you've got out called Unlock Your Inner Magic,
Yeah.
Practical Intuition for Everyday Life. Hold it up for
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah.
you'll see a copy. And of course, we'll link to it in the show notes and you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Who is this book for? Tell us all about it.
Okay, so years ago, I studied with Jack Canfield. I did all of his programs, The Breakthroughs to Success, and I made a really beautiful friend there. Her name's Ruth, and Ruthie's dad was in the Holocaust, and so we would when I would go to California, we'd visit and we'd be together, and I just loved her. I just love her, and so Ruthie was an author. Now she's a ghostwriter and she does other things. But what had happened was about 15 years ago when I was on television, she said, Callie, I'm meeting people in New York City at the Javits Center. We're going to be meeting people. And so I had written a book. And of course, I also award-winning writer, from the time I was like, I think in like second grade. And so I wrote a beautiful book and I presented it I talked to a lot of big publishers about it, New Age publishers, but then I presented it to a really well-known publisher. And the editor said, oh my gosh, Callie, anything that you have, we want to see. And, you're on TV, you've got this great platform. And I said, okay, great. And so I was very naive. I was like maybe 32 or something. And even though I'd done all the show houses and, in Washington, D.C. and won the Capitol Show House out of 5,000 booths, I should have known better. And what happened was when one of my nephews was being born in California, I went out to stay with my sister and to see Ruthie and to do other things with other people. And anyways, I went to a little New Age bookstore in San Diego, and there was a book on the shelf that was attractive to me. And so I pulled it off the shelf, and literally it was my book, and all they had done was change the name on the book. They hadn't changed the title. They hadn't changed the very slim outline. So it was sort of like awful, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I think that I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with just sort of like the social media and putting myself out there. And so I do want to say thank you for the safe space that you provide with this. Because I'm certainly, I think, in the category of somebody who just prefers to connect one-on-one and, form that relationship. So this book was really me saying, okay, it's time, Cal. Let's reformat it with all of the wisdom of the last 15 years. When my mother-in-law had passed earlier this year, that sort of freed me because I was her Medicare power of attorney and raising small kids. And so, hospice and the assisted living that she was in said that I was the best advocate they'd ever had. And so I really have so much that I can empathize with and commiserate with people. And it just only, I think, accentuates what I'm able to offer people. And so when I wrote Unlock Your Magic, really the main focus, the thing that's groundbreaking is the transactive memory portion. And I'll talk to you about that more. But the main focus was practical intuition for everyday life. And what that's about is just the fact that, this is my only life as Callie. And so I have to work within the parameters of that. This is my family. These are my friends. This is the time of life that I built a big career as a big fish in a big pond, which if no one understands like what it means to be in Washington, D.C. and win all the top awards, think about that, because I built a huge business that was an Inc. 5000 business. And then, I got hit really hard in the 2008 decline with real estate and interior design. And that's at the same year that I was on television and was shifting gears majorly. So you have to be able to reinvent yourself, but you have to be able to reinvent yourself within the parameters. And one of the kind of like jokes that I'll make to explain to people what I mean is that, we have the swimming pool and it's where all the scouts come and the baseball teams. And it's a place where I want people to come and be a community. And it's why I founded the Girl Scout troop, was so that I could make friends with the other parents and we could form our own, and so, which has been wonderful, by the way. And so when you're using your intuition in a practical way, what that means is that you're honoring life as it is and the parameters as it is. And so I feel like sometimes the healing work, it takes me back in time. I'm in Bethesda and I'm working at a psychiatrist's office, a beautiful big building where I did yoga in the mornings and my healing work. And I remember a lady said to me, make sure you close everything out, make sure you put your bubble up and, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got to remember to do that, because you can't be doing healing work while kids are in the pool. Like, that's what I always said. Like, I have to still physically be Callie with my feet, grounded on the floor. And I have to be paying attention to what's in front of me and fully focused and giving my full attention. And it's the same with the readings. I never officially took a break because I was doing such high caliber work. However, because I was needed and I felt that it was my duty to my mother-in-law to be there for her, you can't really be running somebody to the oncologist, taking care of little kids, being a caregiver, monitoring medications and pain levels and, all of those things. And so really, what happened with my mother-in-law and myself, because I guess I'm what you would call like a maximalist. I'm really great at a lot of things, but there comes a breaking point for everybody. And the breaking point for our family during COVID was my husband just said, I can't do the business that he was in anymore. That was really the big issue. And so I have had to come sort of back and pick up the pieces of how I want my life to be now, as a mama to small kids that are still in elementary school, and as an artist, and how do I want to function in the world. And so you actually, David, helped me understand that. This kind of brings me to tears a little bit, because I have a calling. And when you have a calling and you are, when you have a gift like I do, and you also have, I think, the sense of duty and ethics and responsibility that's behind it, you have to pursue that. And so I never wanted to be famous. It's not really in my DNA, probably because of the things that happened to me when I was a kid. But I do such a great job, and I have such a loyal clientele that I really felt like, okay, I'm ready to do this again. I'm ready to do this again. Yeah. I think I advertise that I have 10,000 hours of healing. But I think it's probably closer to 20,000. Yeah. And so, I do just want to say thank you so much, because it hadn't really occurred to me how I was going to piece things back together. Because when you're in the trenches and you're decluttering and you're when death is like right in front of you and you've got to deal with that, it's a really big deal. And so that's, I think, why it's practical intuition. For sure, when my mother-in-law passed away, she was like setting off the fire alarm for the week after she died. There are, I went to a retreat in July this year, and I was talking to my new girlfriends about her, and the candlesticks fell over in front of us. And it was probably because she wasn't really liking what I was saying. Because my mother-in-law was, she struggled. She had been alone for 50 years, and she was very entitled and very needy. And there was an element of her that wanted everybody to share in that suffering. But as somebody who graduated, at the top of my cohort with my master's in World War II history, what I write about is women. And I don't believe that I could be so good of a evidential medium or somebody that's like a narrative nonfiction writer if I didn't understand the human condition the way that I do, and feel for people and empathize with that.
Thank you. Talk to me about this concept of transactive memory. You touched base on it for just a moment. I found that to be a very interesting chapter in your book. Go into that a little bit more of what it is and why, or I should say, how could that help us to tap into that?
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of filming the online course for that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Um, practical intuition is really about, here's my craft and here is how I'm able to um, uh, bring that artistry into the real world, that creative resilience. And I think it's sort of asking like the question about what is genius. If you kind of go back to Michelangelo and we think of this very young person who is painting like a masterpiece of the Sistine Chapel, you wonder to yourself, how does one person have all of that incredible talent? Like, how are they born with all of that? And I think that today, when we're having medical breakthroughs all the time, and these young scientists, these doctors are getting their perhaps their MD and their PhD, and they're considering like they're synthesizing decades of information. And sure, they have computers and AI to do some of that for them, but still, it's the way they add things together and ask the questions, because they're able to come up with these incredible answers. But they're like downloading like millions of bytes of data in their brains to figure out how they're going to synthesize this to create a solution. And so when you talk about what Helen Keller's message was about how, she was trying to comfort these people, the Jews, the Catholics, the Roma, and saying, listen, even if your entire libraries are no longer there, it's okay, because you can't extract that wisdom and that really, I guess, that kindness, that compassion for one's fellow man. No one can take it away from us, because it's like who we are. It's just as who we are. It's a language in and of itself. It's a language in and of itself. So I do think that for me, because I'm sort of, I guess, the odd person that excels to the highest echelons. My clientele are Fortune 500 and 5,000 people. They're the CEOs that are running billion-dollar companies. I don't know that people really understand what that's like to be in that position, whether I'm doing spiritual counseling or healing work over something that's happened to them in their personal lives, or I'm doing high-end interior design work that's like thousands of different creative things that need to be knit down into a practical solution. So it's like you're coming from your imagination and making it real with probably the most demanding clientele on the planet. So I'm no pushover, and I'm very firm in my dealings with people and my boundaries. And when I promise that the healing is truly transformational, which again is like a word that is so, like, everybody says it's transformational. But when I say that, like, that's my word. I've given you my word. So I'm pulling from an encyclopedia of knowledge. So for instance, I prefer readings that are on the phone, not face-to-face. I'm happy to do face-to-face. That's how I started for years and years and years. But if I'm doing them on the phone, I'm not distracted. I'm not saying, oh, David, I love that wallpaper. Where did you get that? Or I'm not saying to somebody, what's the jewelry that you're wearing? Or perhaps my reality eye is seeing a person not as they really are, and not talking about what the pain or what's underlying or what's going on with them, because perhaps they look so put together. Mm-hmm. And so being on the phone allows me to just listen to spirit, just talk to spirit, and get the highest quality, most effective messages for people. And then really, yeah. So that's transactive memory. So yeah. So it's like I might be seeing a scene from a book or a movie. And then I don't question that. They say that we have 65,000 thoughts a day. And so if you think about how much stuff is crossing your ticker tape of your brain, so what I do is I'm just slowing down and I'm paying attention to each thought as it crosses and saying this is for that person.
Mm-hmm. So when someone comes to you for a reading, would you say it's primarily for mediumship or also psychic in terms of the future, or is it a combination?
It's both. Typically, we start with all the people that are coming in to visit them, and we do a beautiful mediumship reading, and then we talk about where they are in life, what's happening. Like I said, the majority of my clients are people that I've been talking to like every other year for 15 or 20 years now, or people that are referred by them. And one of those gals, and I just had a reading maybe last month. And, it is fascinating because you have to live before you're ready to like have the next reading. It's something that you should be doing every month, I don't believe. But what it means is that, for instance, I was able to give her perspective on her father in law, and which then informed her perspective on her husband and his worries and his concerns. And it helps people put their perspective and put themselves in somebody else's shoes, so that, like even in the best of marriages or the best relationships, sometimes you do need that little extra thing where you're just like, oh, like I've been totally ignoring this thing that my partner's been doing for quite a long time now. And I probably should step up to the plate here and figure out what it is that they're upset about. And sometimes you just need that little bump, that little, yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people are so distraught and they're grieving so much that they're not like able to see things. So for instance, one of my clients that I absolutely adore, I just adore this lady. Her mother passed away this week. And so I was praying before I got on the call with you today. And when I spoke to her the other day, and it was an emergency. So, and that's the other thing is I want to be here for my clients. So I try to be as accessible as I possibly can. But anyways, I said, I see someone in a yellow and white sari with the red dot and the glasses. Oh, that's not my mother. That must be my mother-in-law or something. And I said, And so this morning she sent me a picture that was at the temple of her mother. And I'm like, this is picture. I was like, this is it. She's in her yellow and white sari. She's got her glasses. She's there. She's with you. She's doing her thing, So, sometimes people are too focused on like only getting one person. So, so they'll get like brothers-in-laws or people and they're like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Yeah, of course, I've had people do that. That's my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, right. Of course. Because they really maybe just want to get something else.
Right.
But yeah, I would say that for the most part, unless you've had a lot of loss, an hour is suffice. I do offer, I can't even remember what it is on the page. I think it's a 75-minute. And then I do offer the transformational healing, which is when we take what we learned from the reading and we go in with past life regression and future life progression, and we really are sort of getting down to the nitty gritty of what it is that is really holding you back. And I'm giving them like a big toolbox of a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's good work.
Yeah, amazing. You also have a second book that you've recently released called the Native American Spirit Wheel Dream Journal. And I know it's based on the Native American medicine wheel, but it's, as you describe it, a wheel within a wheel within a wheel.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's obviously, for those of you who are watching YouTube, you can see the cover of the book. We'll link to it in our show notes. What is the concept of this book? It's a journal, and I've also read through it myself. How would this benefit people What are the wheels that you're talking about? Help us understand this. It's a very fascinating concept. I love the visual in the front of the book that shows kind of all the wheel within the wheel within the wheel.
Yeah, I'll show
Yeah.
you. So what this is about is the fact that one of the books that I've written that has not yet been published is talking about um, Buddhism and really just being in the moment. In other words, I can't hit the brakes yesterday. I can't hit the brakes tomorrow. I have to pay attention now. Now is my moment of action.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the Native Americans offer us is a way to be complementary with whatever your religious belief system is, because their belief system is tied to the seasons of life. So, for instance, yesterday is the new moon, in winter, renewal, but it's also the new moon of the buffalo animal totem. And so, what that means is that it's our time to consider endurance, getting through the hard, icy winter. It's our time to reflect on what we've done well and what we haven't done well, perhaps our incompletes, and what it is that I need to pick up that I've dropped. But what's special about the winter time of renewal is that it's the elderly time. So for the Native Americans, spring would be birth, very similar to Jesus, right? Easter. And so then I'm planting the seeds of new ideas. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a life time. It can also just be a relationship. It can be a project, and it can be as fine tuned to each month. So each month is an Easter and a birth. And then, of course, a rebirth when it comes around the next new moon. And so the new moon is spring, and then we're the teenager, and it's the waxing moon. The moon is growing. And then when we become an adult, it's a full moon. And then as we're aging and elderly and then eventually dying, then it is the waning moon, and it's going back to that crescent moon, and then black moon, which is the new moon. And so winter, which is the time of being elderly, is the time where I can access all of that lovely wisdom is asking me, it's really begging me to please just pay attention and to evaluate from a point that's perhaps less emotional. And so in the book, I do honor the wisdom of the Native Americans, who I do feel are somewhat neglected as a parent to elementary age kids. So, what was special about how the Native Americans viewed things is that, if we take the careful killing of perhaps a deer for venison or the buffalo, and how they used every single part of it, it really matches with what we're doing today with our eco consciousness and the sustainability movement. And, with my girlfriends like Annie Selke, who owns Dash and Albert, and I've been friends with her for years, that sustainability part is huge. For instance, I only use cloth towels. I try never to use paper towels. So it's really speaking to like the everyday moment of, do I really need to order this thing from Amazon? Do I really need all this junk? Or can I find new ways of reusing, reducing, recycling, which in fact are the old ways? And so, how does that relate to spirituality? That relates to spirituality by being self reliant and using my intuitive relationship with spirit and the angels. And I do believe in the angels, and I do believe that my grandparents, for instance, are there with me, my aunts, my uncles, that I can do better now, not only for myself and how I am in the world with my duty and my ethics and my responsibilities and my gifts, and how I can be with my family. Because part of the gift of being older is that you understand that perhaps the best way to get through things is to bite your tongue in half. till you can taste the iron of your blood, because family is challenging. And then it's our relationship to Earth, which we're nothing without our relationship to Mother Earth. So it really is about being in the noticing. So yeah, the circle is birth, life, death, and renewal. And it's about being more conscious about what seeds it is that I even want to plant. So when I have fruition and I'm at the harvest time of my season, which is right now for most of us, before we go into the wintering phase, yeah, it's very powerful. So here's what you were asking me for,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the full wheel. And I can tell you from the millions and millions of images on Canva, I had to make this myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no document that exists that has all of these parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a
So
very fascinating visual. Yeah, I really
yeah,
encourage people to check that out. One of the
yeah.
questions that you invite us to ask in the last pages of this book, once again, it's the Native American Spirit Wheel Dream Journal, and we'll link to that, of course, in the show notes, is you ask, how can I honor the spiral of time in my own life, acknowledging the wisdom of the past, living consciously in the present, and contributing to the future? So let me say that again: acknowledging the wisdom of the past, living consciously in the present, and contributing to the future. Um, how are you personally seeking to honor the spirit of, or I should say, the spiral of time in your own life right now?
Yeah, I would say that that's my mantra. It's so beautiful, David. Thank you for reading it to me. It's so lovely. Um, my girlfriend Amy Zerner, Monty Farber, who I met in New York City many, many years ago, who does all of the beautiful spirit cards, Enchanted World. Amy and I are always liking each other's things, and I used to do gift boxes and sell her cards, which is so beautiful. So I think that what it means is, Amy and I feel I have always felt are sort of kindred spirits. I have other friends that I feel this way about as well. But we really believe that we have something valuable to offer, and it's our responsibility to do so. And so for me, I think I want to be careful how I say this. Having had to be the person on the phone dealing with all of the healthcare workers and hospice and talking to the nurse every day, going and getting my mother-in-law awake and like looking at her and thinking, oh God, is she alive? Is she breathing? I don't want to scare her. And trying to facilitate the best death for her that I could. I would definitely say that I could consider myself a death doula at this point. I'm disturbed by the commercialization of grief, trauma, and death, the commercialization of PTSD. From somebody who's a 2-time gun violence survivor, and I don't even want to go into all the other things that I've dealt with in life, there is a point where you have to say, this is my life. I am like Gwen Stefani. It's my life, man. It's my life. And I have got to find a way to be spiritually in tune. I have to find a way that I'm authentic with myself and with other people. And I have to find a way where the boundaries are beautifully firm and yet beautifully flexible. And how am I going to do that? And so I think that the Native American Journal is ideal for that because it's teaching us that we're all going to go through a season of life. And while I know there's a book coming out, I think in March, by a gentleman who wrote a book called Time Anxiety. While I don't want to feed into the anxiety of feeling like we only have so many days left, at the same time, there does need to be an understanding that sort of what Arnold Schwarzenegger, I guess, said was like, you have to be useful. And so as you had a time in your life where you were a pastor, and I shared with you that my uncle had that time in his life as well. Sometimes those things have like an opening and a closing, and then they blossom and flower into other things. And so this stage of my life is really juicy and complex. I just wrote a screenplay on Shangri-La that's a takeoff on the James Hilton book, Lost Horizon, which is really talking about that. Robert is the main character, and he's basically torn. Do I stay in this gorgeous, sunny, fertile place and make love and have a wonderful time, or am I needed in the world, and World War II is on the horizon, and I have a duty to do, and patriotism, and sort of like E.B. Sledge said, I realized when I got to battle in California, um, sorry, when I got to battle, that I really was fodder for the cannons. Like, is that all I am? So I think for me, I'm at that crux point where if I'm doing a one-to-one session, the value is so there. There's thousands of happy clients that have had such huge transformation. And so the price is not what I think of as potentially extortion. I like some of these prices that I see are so high that it's like mind boggling, and also not so low that it's like the cost of a coat or something. So I do feel that people have to put in their energy as well. And then I'm speaking to the broader audiences now, where I'm painting all the time. So I showed you those the first time. I don't have anything that's easy to show you today. Here, I'll just, if I'll mess up my camera if I'll do it, but I'll just show you some of the things that are around. I don't know if you can see those.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. And so, how we're showing up artistically in life is important. And those were things that I did literally in hospice beside Noreen's bed when she was dying.
Mm.
And it brightened everyone's day. All of the nurses and helpers and doctors wanted to see what I was up to, and they wanted to touch things, which was awesome. And if I ever have to do it again, I'll bring things so everybody can do it. It was like a wonderful time to create a great atmosphere.
Hmm.
So having built one of the largest networking groups, in Montgomery County, and built this big, beautiful Girl Scout group that's all about service and duty, I think it is time for me now to matriculate and to build a larger movement where I'm a role model, and some of my work, for instance, the screenplay or the books, which are the War Wives and the Cabinet War Wives, which are talking about women. Everything I'm doing is about women, because our lives are interrupted constantly. We're over time, David. I see that. Our lives are interrupted constantly. We're often asked to hold everything together. And what happens to that woman when she has to come out of the cocoon of whatever responsibilities were placed upon her, and now she has to, blossom onto the world again? And so those are the
Mhm.
people that I want to help.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, if somebody is looking for assistance in terms of a mediumship reading, or I know that you also have a mentorship program to help
Yes.
people start their own businesses.
Yes.
What are some of the ways that people can work with you right now?
Yeah. If you go on my website, which is my name, Callie Claire, CALLIE CLAIRE. And that's how I was billed when I was on television as well. So you can kind of go back in time and see some of that stuff. Um, I think that that's the best way. We do have a new link that I'll make sure you have all these. That's basically the Bell Epic mentorship. And a Bell Epic is your time to have a renaissance and to create beauty in the world. And what I found when I was coming out of these really heavy responsibilities um, of caregiving, and dealing with other people's stuff, that I got swallowed whole into coaching, as I have in the past. And after that coaching happened, there was nothing tangible.
Hmm.
So the Bell Epic is really about tangibles, and that is about helping you create your funnels and your products that are authentic to your true self, so that when you graduate after a year of elite coaching, you have a book to help you get your message out to the world. And then you also have a fully functional, they don't even call them websites anymore, but just the landing pages and the website and the funnels and the social media integration. So that's where it's going, because I don't want people to have the same problem that I did, because these women do so much for others.
Mm-hmm.
They do so much for other people.
Wonderful. So, 2 books, want to make sure that people are aware of and will draw to their attention: Unlock Your Inner Magic, Practical Intuition for Everyday Life, and Native American Spirit Wheel Dream Journal. We'll link those in the show notes. If you're listening on your phone, you can swipe up now and click those links. And if you're on YouTube, we'll have those links there as well. And then CallieClaire.com and your Callie Claire on Instagram, where people can find you. So,
Yes.
Callie, you have a very unique journey, as do I. Yours is way more unique than mine, where you've had these amazing twists and turns. And the word that I want to draw to kind of close our time together, you mention it in one of your books, is you call yourself an intuitive academic.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thread that I see woven between all of these, from being a psychic medium on television, award-winning artist, a high-end interior designer, NLP practitioner, getting your master's in World War II military history. All of this is like, you have, what shines through in our conversation today is you have obviously this deep intuition that you're connected to the spirit realm. You have a deep sense of empathy toward other people. You deeply love humanity and want the best for people. And you also have a respect for what has happened before in our lifetimes and what we can learn from that. And specifically, what we can learn from the women who have gone before us. And then I also see in you this deep desire to do, I don't even know if the right thing is the right way to say it, but do the thing that's going to be beneficial for this lifetime. Do the thing that's going to be beneficial, not just for you personally, but for beneficial for our world. And all of those things interwoven together are just beautiful. It's just beautiful. So thank you for how you have served humanity and how you are serving now and how you will serve in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so lovely, David. Thank you.